Hey Trey, thanks for coming on the show today.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to have you in the studio. It's really been great having Mesa as a sponsor of the show and learning a lot about what you guys do. And it's exciting for me because as long as I've been doing my podcast, I've been trying to get more into the innovation, technology, seeing where we're doing better things for the environment and kind of get into that forward thinking space. I feel like Mesa really captures all of it.
Yeah, we're most definitely trying to be forward thinking. It's still, the industry is still, in some aspects, very old fashioned. However, there are companies and there are people who are driving the industry forward through innovation and technologies. When people think of the oil and gas industry, they just think of a drilling rig or a completion crew or some production equipment. But there's a huge aspect to that which is mission critical, and that's the power aspect of where these producers are getting their energy from and what that power is energizing. And as operators turn more towards electrification, well, that demand grows. So that's kind of the niche that we've been filling for the last 10 years. And we've made a name for ourselves just by doing it by providing good quality and productivity behind what we do.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the main thing. It's the quality and consistency.
Yeah.
And I love like one thing I love about it though is the natural gas aspect, like being able to prevent waste and be, like you were telling me before about operators being able to use their own product instead of having to sell it. Like, what's that whole process like?
Yeah, it ranges like in some areas, and I won't veer too far away from the Permian, but in some areas like the Bakken, several years ago there was very little gas takeaway, and so there was a large amount of flaring going on in that area. Same thing in the Permian not too long ago as well. And so being able to take some of that stranded gas, that flare gas, take that molecule and turn it into an electron, yeah, it shows not just from like a Mesa standpoint, but from an industry standpoint, like just we're stewarding the resources that are available to us in a
Mm-hmm.
responsible way. But still, even still in the Permian, yeah, there has been pipeline infrastructure built, but the capacity still isn't near where the supply is of gas that's running through it. And so, a lot of operators have worthless gas, if you will. Like Waha prices are zero, sometimes negative, and so that gas has little to no value. So operators are starting to realize, like, hey, we need to be our own power providers. Take this asset or this resource and monetize it. Right? Let's take that gas. Let's create our own power since ERCOT and utility providers are behind the ball. No fault to their own, just that the grid infrastructure was built out for yesterday, and
Mm.
power demand is growing so quickly. They're having difficulty keeping up, and we can talk more about that later. But it's nice to see these operators, I think, being driven a little bit because of the bottleneck of power. Companies who are innovating like Mesa, and then being able to say, "Hey guys, let's take this gas, let's monetize it, and turn it into electricity for you to use in field."
And was that a tough sell in the beginning, or was that like trying to get them on board, or to see the process? Was it more of a show, how it works, or were they open minded to it?
Yeah, it not so open minded 10 years ago, um, but yeah, definitely a tough sell because before these natural gas generators made it into the oil and gas industry, it was largely anytime there was on-site power needed, it was diesel generators,
Mm-hmm.
old reliable, dirty burning diesel generators.
Yeah.
And so getting the industry to kind of change their mindset of like, wait, we can use wellhead gas straight from our well to power our equipment out in the field. And so it was a tough sell in the beginning, but it didn't take long to catch on. And I fast forward 11 years we've been in business. There was only a handful of people peddling power generation that utilize natural gas, be it recip engines or turbines, in the industry. And now there is a bunch. There's a whole lot of folks in the industry who provide some level of service with regards to power generation.
Gotcha. But there's more to it than that. Like we've talked about before, like I mean there's a lot of people that say like okay, this is the latest trend, let's jump on this and then they kind of they deliver a similar experience, but it's not that full package as far as the quality, the customer service and problem solving.
Yeah, absolutely. That that suite. Look, to simplify it, it's an engine and it's a gen in, and you put a package around it, and now you have a generator. It is that easy to own a generator. It's not that easy to manage, service, and operate a fleet of natural gas power generation. We have 11 years, over a decade of experience doing this. It all comes down to service. It all comes down to responsibly providing that service and reliably providing that service. The responsibility side is being stewards of the resources that we have. It's also optimizing locations for our customers. We can put any generators out on location in any combination. But what our goal is at Mesa is to drive down that kilowatt per hour equivalency price to compete with line power, overhead infrastructure. And then the maintenance aspect of operating our fleet just in the oil and gas side, not in the other verticals of Mesa. Our fleet is roughly 2,500 generators, so about half a gigawatt, actually a little over that, about 700 megawatts of power in our fleet. And managing that fleet, maintaining the health of that fleet is an extraordinarily complex job. And we have some amazingly talented people within Mesa who manage all of that. So yeah, honestly, much like podcasting, I'm sure there's folks who start off podcasting and,
Yeah.
and they enjoy the first month or two or three or four, and then they fizzle out. It's very similar in anything, and power generation is not exclusive to that. It's the more you scale and the more you grow, the larger and more complex the problems are. Same for our operators. The more that they scale out their assets, the more wells they drill, the more wells they complete, the more power they need. And so on-site power isn't as effective or efficient. And so that's where we really started innovating with our partners and our customers with regards to distributed power. And so instead of just putting generators on locations, it was more of having a conversation of, hey, look, let's build out microgrids, kind of a spoken will concept. If you think we have a centralized group of generators, and there's lines and poles out to all the different locations. So kind of a centralized power hub, if you will, powering their whole field. And that allows us to scale up and down nicely with their assets. It also allows for some resiliency and reliability in that solution. So if a generator or two or three goes down, because they are engines and they will fail eventually, you don't lose the whole location. There's some reliability or some resiliency in that
Yeah.
solution. And then it gives you your best bang for the buck. So you can optimize that site. Microgrids for a lot of our partners are around that 6, 7, 8 kilowatt per hour equivalency. And right now, utilities in the Permian are selling power for 10 to 12 cents a kilowatt hour. So we are significantly lower than line power. We're just as reliable, if not more so. And we can scale up and down with our partners. Whereas once you build that infrastructure out from the line power, there's no real way to recoup that initial capex investment.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see where, I mean, like that alone would take some of that like burden, like that decision off their shoulders. Like that's not so burdensome to do.
Yeah, and that's kind of the definition behind a partnership is us going in and aligning ourselves with our customers, fully understanding what their mission is and what some of their goals are, and aligning those with what we're trying to do within Mesa. And there's some other great power generation providers out there. I'm not knocking any of our competition. I love having competition because that's what drives innovation. And there's a ton of work for everybody. So I think today, and I'm going to preface this statement with don't quote like my exact numbers, but they're close enough. I think today's standards, like the peak power in the Permian, is around 6 gigawatts worth of power, and that's large. That's a lot of power. Most of that is oil and gas operations. ERCOT's projecting that by 2030, so in 5 years, it's going to be 24 gigawatts. So a
Wow.
4x multiple. That's incredible. And that's driven by further oil and gas exploration and production. It's also data centers and hyperscalers
Mm-hmm.
moving into the area because they want to be close to the energy source.
Mm.
And so when you think about a delta of 16 to 18 gigawatts of power, 4 times what the Permian's using right now, where is that power coming from? And that's
Mm-hmm.
between now and 2030. The There was a study done. It's a Permian reliability plan between ERCOT and the PUC in Texas, and they actually got approved through this plan some extra high voltage transmission lines to help bring power into the Permian. 765 kV lines, if I'm not mistaken. But those, they haven't started construction yet, and those are anticipated to be completed by 2030. So if the load growth is going to grow by 4x between now and 2030, and the transmission lines who are bringing power aren't going to be ready till 2030, and that's a very aggressive timeline. I think it'll be
Mm.
beyond that.
Yeah.
Who's going to make up that delta? And 17 gigawatts, 18 gigawatts worth of power is an insane amount of power. And so that's why, Mesa Solutions and companies that are similar to us are sitting in a good spot right now because we're bridging that gap for the operators.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's obviously valuable and very much needed. What about other forms of electricity with wind and solar? Is that complement Mesa, or is that something that you work with?
We can, yeah. I think, look, me personally, I think it's going to take all forms of power. It can't just be one source. And so, we talk about natural gas power plants. We need more of those in Texas. Wind and solar are great, but they're not dispatchable. So
Mm-hmm.
when you need them, you can't have them necessarily. We don't control the wind. Um, I told you the other day on the phone, I'm 43 years old, and every night it has gotten dark. And so of my life, so solar isn't dispatchable either. But you can add battery backup. There's a lot of cogeneration opportunities out there, and yes, we pair very nicely. We're actually working some projects. I won't discuss on this podcast, but we're working some projects where large scale data centers, hyperscalers, and we are going to be providing power and cogeneration with some solar and
Nice.
battery backup. So
Okay.
yeah, solar is good in a little bit of form. Wind is fine. I don't think they're very cost effective forms of energy,
Yeah,
but it
that's my biggest question. Is it like is the juice worth the squeeze?
it depends on which side of that argument you sit.
Okay.
I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on the economics
Sure.
behind it, but there's a lot of people who get into the levelized cost of that energy. And uh, me personally, I don't think it's worth the squeeze. I think there's a lot more power and efficiencies, just the dispatchability aspect in natural gas power plants. I think nuclear is a very good power source as well. People are scared of that. I get it, but there's been a lot of engineering controls and a lot of advancements made in that. There's a lot of talk in the oil and gas industry as well about, I'm not sure if you've heard of small modular reactors,
I
so
haven't.
portable nuclear reactors.
Okay.
Those are supposed to be out in about the next 5 to 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
There's a lot of folks that are bullish on those in the oil and gas industry. I'm not so much bullish, not skeptical by any means. I just don't think that oil and gas is going to get the permits they need to have those. I
Mm,
think if anybody gets to use small modular reactors, SMRs, I think it'll be the hyperscalers like Google and Amazon and folks like
okay.
that. Like they're going to own all those. As
Sure.
fast as they can be commercialized, those guys will have them. That's my opinion. I'm sure you'll have some comments of people arguing that, but but that's what I see. So yeah, I think other forms of energy, they're all good in their own right. Some more economical than others, but it's going to take all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that approach where it's just like what's the best option? Like
Hmm.
bringing everything to the table, but also really looking at the long game.
Hmm.
Because like what does it take to build these wind turbines? Like that's something that I've looked at a lot. It's I mean it takes a lot of energy to get them built.
For
And
sure.
if the wind's not blowing or they freeze, then like you said, you can't rely on that.
That's right.
And so it's great hearing about the natural gas generators because the diesel generators are like, I mean, that's for yesterday, like in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
I mean, because it's like they are dirty, they do pollute, they are loud, and I mean, it's a great source that you've been familiar with, but it's really not the way forward.
Hmm.
And if there are alternatives that are cleaner and more efficient and just as readily available, if not more so, like that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Natural gas is readily available in this country, specifically in the Permian, and it's not a byproduct of production of oil, but it's we do have those, like I was talking about earlier, we have those capacity restraints in the pipelines, and so a lot of
Hmm.
time that drives the price down. And look, oil and gas operators are for-profit companies, and if there's no value in that resource, then what are they to do with it,
Right.
right? So yeah, again, we're we're obviously advocates of monetizing that resource,
Sure.
turning it into power, and it doesn't just go for, excuse me, oil and gas operators. Like I think the conversation is starting to become a lot more sophisticated. Whereas, hey, let's take some of this natural gas from oil and gas operators, and utilities are wanting to use it. Utilities in the Permian are starting to look at, hey, how can we monetize this gas for the operator? We have power supply constraints. The demand is way too high for what we can. So let's figure out how to create some infield solutions from a utilities perspective as well.
Yeah.
And that goes across the board, even outside of oil and gas in the industrial space. Everybody's looking for resiliency of their infrastructure if they have it, and they want it to be highly reliable as well. And so, power generation, specifically around natural gas, right now is number one priority.
That's excellent to hear. And, I've been doing a lot of research recently, just as I've expanded, kind of like what you were saying earlier about, a podcast that's growing or if it fizzles out. Well, we're episode 63. And so I'm pretty established as far as I've talked about a lot of things and I've hit a lot of different areas in
Hmm.
the industry. So now I'm expanding. I'm trying to get my own knowledge to a little bit, like further reaching more corners
Yeah.
and seeing what other people are doing. So I've tapped into the history a little bit and kind of looked at how we've evolved over time. And I was telling you now I have my daily show and I kind of come to the table with a lesson plan and I'm learning just as much as I'm educating. But I mean, with AI and technology, I'm able to put all of this together and understand it. And it was funny because the subject that we covered yesterday was AI and frac.
Oh, nice.
And I did the history of frac and how here we are in 2020s. Liberty Energy is talking about being like fully AI by the end of this year, and in the 1860s, which, I mean, that may be ambitious, but it also makes sense
Hmm.
because, like, the way that you're able to just streamline the operation, it's cost effective, it's better for the environment, it's checking all the boxes that we're always wanting to check.
Yeah.
But when fracking was first discovered in the 1860s, they used explosives.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how over time we have gone from being very unsophisticated, trial and error, use what you've got, it could be very dangerous, it could be very hazardous, to now being able to streamline and automate and be more forward thinking and be those stewards of the environment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think without exactly what you're talking about, without that innovation, without that forward thinking, and without leaders in our industry who are educating and also setting the narrative, not letting the media
Yeah.
or politicians set the narrative, I think if we, get our perspective out and the truth behind what's really happening and continue to innovate and continue to steward those resources, like without that, our industry dies, right? It will die. At least in public perception, which it's taken some hits. But I think we can do a much better job. We do a great job of innovating. Like, I don't think people outside of our industry quite realize the engineering and the innovation and the technology that goes into this industry. I
Hmm.
think a lot of people just kind of think it's a bunch of knuckle draggers out there, like tripping drill pipe or whatever. But it's not. There are
Right.
some, I mean, some of the most intelligent individuals I've ever met work in this industry.
Sure.
And it's a challenging industry, and you know, it's as big as it is. It's also small. But yeah, without that innovation, you know, without that growth, we die. Um, and so I applaud you, and people like you for having these podcasts, because education is a huge part of what we should be doing as an industry, both internally but also externally.
Hmm. Well, I appreciate that. And I mean, as I've gone along, there's just been so many, peaks and valleys, like uncovering new layers and learning more about people and how everything works together. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, the matrix is, it's like, it's the minute I feel like I'm really starting to get, like, grasp it, I'll walk into a whole new arena
Hmm.
and I'm like, I don't know anything. And it's like, I need to get to work, I need to be talking to more people. But then it expands, and I think that that's why the podcast has grown the way that
For
it
sure.
has,
Yeah.
because as I move and as I pace myself, I'm consistent, I show up. I've got my own streamlined operations. I know I need more, I want more, because I've been able to get everything down to an art and a science. It's like, okay, I can step outside of this. So I've been working on that for a few months. I'm still not sure what that's going to look like. But even incorporating the daily show, like,
Hmm.
okay, now, like, that's the norm, that's what I'm doing, because I really enjoy that, because since I do that more to a blue collar audience, I feel like I'm able to open up their perspective. Because in so many ways, like you're saying about our industry not getting, like, the right story out there, within the industry there are different echo chambers.
Hmm.
You're going to have a different perspective if you're on LinkedIn opposed to seeing, blue collar workers on TikTok, or if you're at a conference in Midland, or if you're working in the field. It's totally different worlds. It's the same industry working towards the same goals that have absolutely no idea what the other one is doing.
Very true.
So within our own industry, we have those echo chambers. But then when you look outside the industry, there's not a lot of education. I mean, it's either an argument or a battle, or you just don't know. You don't, or you don't want to know.
Hmm.
And so to understand the process, that education reveals opportunity for people that work in the industry, and a better understanding for people that don't work in it but are consumers. So they are just as much a part of the industry. Like, I've done a session on the life cycle of a plastic bag, and how we produce plastics from hydrocarbons to how they end up either recycled or in a landfill, and how we can reduce our footprint just with plastic. And so I feel like that brings people together in a way that you probably wouldn't think that you'd want to even be brought to. That's like community, talking about, waste management and reduction, and
Yeah.
like taking the need off of so much production. It's like, well, if we cut back a little, if we, we're a little bit more mindful of the environment. It's not about eliminating the oil and gas industry. It's about being able to use it smarter, and then knowing the innovations that are happening. It makes us less adversarial and more supported. And I think that is something that we, like, looking to the future. I hope we see more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. That was well said too. Um, yeah, there's, you know, I'm not going to take us down a rabbit hole, but at the same time, while we're finding ways to steward those resources, because they are finite, right? Um, there's other countries across the world who are just exploiting them as fast as they possibly can. And you look at China and India, um, you know, they are consuming more coal. They're actually building coal plants, like a plant a day. So while we're going in one direction with regards to energy and oil and gas production, they're going in the complete opposite direction. So
Mm.
really, anything that we do for the environment that is good, and we should absolutely. But between India and China, they're throwing dirt on top of it.
Wow, it's interesting, the way that you frame that. And I do always feel guilty if I order something and I see that it's made in China, and it's especially if it's junk, or it's
Yeah.
like this is just more plastic. Do I need this? So I start, taking a hard look at my own life. I'm like, we get a lot of stuff from China, and it's not really great quality.
Amen to that. Yeah, we should do that in our personal lives. We learned that lesson in 2019, 2020 as a company. We are somewhat vertically integrated. We build our own power generation equipment and distribution equipment in Casper, Wyoming. But our supply chain was exploited during COVID, like many other people's were. We spent a lot of time. We talked earlier. We spent a lot of time creating and planning to establish these new business units or verticals, if you will, outside of oil and gas industry to diversify our revenue stream a little bit. But at the same time, we wanted to secure or diversify our supply chain as well. So coming out of COVID, we learned a lot of valuable lessons. One of those would be onshoring a lot of our parts and materials to build these generators. So with the exception of a few parts and our engines, which come out of South Korea, everything else we try to source from North America. So America, United States, Canada, or Mexico. And that just gives us a whole lot more reliability in our supply chain. And given there's any kind of disruption like we saw in COVID, we can still source the equipment we need to build the generators that our customers need.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so great too. I mean, that it's made in the US.
It is,
Yeah,
yeah.
that it's like you have that pride again, the sense of community, and also like the jobs that are given to people here in the manufacturing space. Like just seeing more of that happen and like the quality that goes into it. It's like somewhere along the way, everything just kept disappearing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
one thing I was going to say also about all my oil and gas history studying that I've been doing recently, one of them was, in the very early days, probably about, 1900, was, gas was just runoff. They didn't have any use for
Mm-hmm.
it. And so, I mean, of course they were polluting, the land and waters and streams because I mean, of course they don't care and they don't know any better
They
at
didn't
that
know any better,
time.
yeah.
I mean, that was just where we were at that time. But with the invention of the automobile, it was like, well, you can use gasoline to run the automobile. And then, of course, then Henry Ford made that possible. Like everyone could have an automobile. It wasn't for the very rich. I watched a documentary on all of this, like the men who built America. It was so good. I could watch it again. The rivalries they had, some of the decisions that they made were just personal,
Oh, yeah.
just
Prideful.
vengeful. Like they rewrote history because they were mad at that guy because he took their supply, and then they didn't need the railroads anymore because they made the pipeline because they didn't want that the other one to have the business. And I mean, I was just fascinated by all of this. But seeing like the changes, the kerosene lamps, electricity. So we were innovative from the jump. Obviously, the industrial revolution really set the bar for what we're able to do today. But each decade, as we grow and we learn, I almost feel like we're coming back to the basics. What's important? What can we do here? How can we be efficient? It's not even just about wanting to use our own resource. It's the best resource, but how do we use it? So it's like you look, at that time in the Industrial Revolution and how all of these manufacturing jobs and these, just streamlined positions of people being able to go and work in factories and make good wages, and they could live one like single income household. And now you look at where we are, and it's like these factories are abandoned and there's no work and people are scrambling just figuring out how to live with two incomes. Like we're going in the right direction with a lot of things, but then there's a lot that's happening where it's like we're living outside of our means and our morals, where it's like people don't have the jobs here, they're going to other countries where it's
Mm-hmm.
just getting mass produced, and it's a lot of stuff that we don't need, where it's like if we do a lot of that here ourselves, if we're stewards of our own lives, then it's like we can really bring it all together and have it make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There's we're kind of spoiled, and I think that's what you were getting at. Like, if you think about that progression that you were talking about, like, how did we get there? Through oil and natural gas. That's how we got to be as prosperous as we are. That's how we had all of those factories that we once had that were manufacturing stuff, electricity. Chris Wright was doing a good job of this before he went to DC,
Hmm.
at Liberty, and he was publishing, him and his company were publishing a quarterly newsletter. I think it was Bettering Human Lives is what it was called, and it's all centered around hydrocarbons, oil and natural gas, and how that contributes to the prosperity of not just the United States but the entire world. And I think we sit here and we quabble about, like, is wind better? Is solar better? Why aren't we using enough wind and solar? And we often forget there's still a billion people in this world who are burning cow dung and other animal dung and wood. And they would
Hmm.
love to have, they don't care where that energy source comes from. They would just like some reliable, cheap, cost effective energy. We forget about that a lot of times because we do live in comfort, and we are a bit spoiled in this country. So, getting back to being an advocate for the industry, folks like Chris Wright, we need more outspoken leaders in this industry like Chris Wright who get that narrative out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And exactly about being spoiled, like to the point where it's like we're getting things like we don't even need.
Oh,
We don't even really want. It's just like we're almost like programmed. We're
we're
consumers.
consumers, yeah.
We need more. And and advertising and marketing do work. It's
Hmm.
like people being influenced by what they're seeing. So, it's like, flipping that script. If we have more Chris Wrights in the world advocating and educating, because there's also like, the advocacy could, go out the window if the message isn't delivered in a way that it's really appealing to the masses. And so I feel like the presentation does
It
matter.
does matter for
We
sure.
don't
Yeah.
want, it's not, we're not trying to battle anyone. It's like just, showing and educating. And I found for me, I have been able to have a lot more conversations with different people where we can come to the table and talk about it
Hmm.
and just share stories, share information, share the technology that's being developed, and take that next step forward together, but not just with that constant battle of the need to be right.
Hmm.
Or it's really scary when you think about how the media can frame the public's perspective or the perception of anything. And so if you look at like mass media, there's not a lot that's being said about the oil and gas industry unless it's bad. And so it's very it's really needed. I definitely agree that, like, we need to have more voices in the industry advocating not just to the people in the industry but outside of it, and just making that table bigger.
Yeah.
It's like, getting people on board and working together. I feel like we're going to make a lot more progress in the shape that we're in, the power that we need by 2030. People need to be working it out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the hard part, is when we're talking about power and getting it to where it needs to go, allocating funds for all of that infrastructure, the transmission lines and the power plants and things like that. Like, that's where the politicians get involved, and that can be laborsome sometimes because in this country, potential is there to shift administrations every 4 years. And
Hmm.
so the priority is constantly changing. Sometimes it's four, sometimes it's eight, but it's always on the move, whether it's the presidency or it's Congress or even at the state level. We've passed some pretty good bills here in Texas to help facilitate capital into natural gas power plants to help harden our electrical infrastructure, because the Permian's growing for sure, but Texas is growing. And so the power that the Permian needs, that equal amount throughout the rest of the state, because there's a lot of folks that are vacating California and New York and states like that, and they're moving to Texas. Their businesses, look at Tesla. Look at there's a lot of manufacturers moving into the state. There's a lot of mining that's moving into the state, and all of those are very energy dependent,
Hmm.
in mass. And so having the politicians understand the industry, understand how natural gas is produced and what to do with it once it is produced, and freeing up capital to get it to where it needs to go to create it into electricity is vital to ERCOT for sure, and the rest of us who live in Texas.
Hmm. Absolutely, yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, because like when you get to the political levels, and it's more It'd be great if with each administration it was more about passing off the baton and not trying to change everything, or,
Yeah.
have it be this like argumentative, constant battle to where you don't even know what's going on when you're listening anymore. But it's like you always are waiting for that shoe to drop. It's either
Hmm.
waiting for the next administration or figuring out what's going on with this one. And if things were more harmonious in this country and our leadership, we wouldn't have a lot of the problems that we do.
Oh, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
mean, obviously including the power sources and things like that, but just overall, because there's a lot of people doing it right. I mean, there's a lot of great companies like Mesa that
Hmm.
have, I mean, put in the effort. They're writing the new story. Like we're living differently. We're seeing AI and electric. Fleets and in frac and so many different innovations that are making the industry better.
Yeah, and they're all driven from that innovation, that desire or that need. Honestly, competition's great, and all these operators are competing against each other. We're competing against other power generation providers, and that's what drives that innovation. And you want to get the cleanest, cheapest barrel of oil out of the ground that you can get, and that's what we spent the last 11 years trying to help our partners do.
Yeah, it's so great, like seeing, especially like when you've talked about going through the pandemic and how you just, kind of looked at different verticals and how can you open up your revenue streams and and just expand. But
Hmm.
one thing that I've noticed too, I was telling you the other day about Mesa is the company culture.
Yes.
You can feel that it's a solid team and the diversity, and I read on the website as well as talking with you about how the company was founded by a group of veterans.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, it's still very prideful
For sure.
for veterans and American families, and really creating a solid place for people to work and grow.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love most about Mesa, and I've been in this industry for oh shoot, 17, 18 years now, but I grew up in it. As I grew up in Midland, so my grandfather was in it, my dad was in it, so I grew up around a lot of operators, a lot of service companies. I spent some time in the military myself, and so that's what drew me to Mesa. That, and I had a friend working there who recruited me heavily, and so I owe him a debt for bringing me here. But the culture here is just unbelievable. It's unlike any other culture that I've experienced in the civilian world or uh, in the military. Yes, we did start off. It was very, very military dense, or veteran dense, I should say. I think at one time, 2016, 2017 timeframe, there was, I think, 70% of us, 80% of us were veterans,
Wow.
which was awesome. Yes. And that was just because we were just filling holes with our own personal network, which
Sure.
just happened to be veterans.
Yeah.
That was when we had 100 employees. Now we have 1,100 employees, and we still take great pride in hiring veterans when we can. I think we're down to 25% veteran employed right now. But we hire, one of the things I love about our organization, one of the many, is we don't hire off of your resume. Honestly, we could care less what your resume says. We want to get you in a room, we want to sit you down, and we want to find out if you're hungry, humble, and smart. If you have those three character traits, we want you on the bus, and we'll find the right seat for you. And that's worked out well for us as an organization. We heavily invest in leadership and in training. The three gentlemen that sit in our C-suite are three of the finest leaders I've ever met, and they have just cascaded that down throughout the organization. Invest highly in that training. It's not just them feeding us like baby birds. Like they bring in professionals, and we go through detailed training on what leadership looks like, how to kind of forge your own leadership brand, and that trickles down to the very lowest levels. The guy who's been hired 3 months ago, who's just getting out of training, reverberates throughout the whole organization. So when you have leaders investing in your future, and you have a career path, and you have that upward mobility in an organization, it just creates a high esprit de corps within the organization, a high level of trust as well, because our leaders are very transparent. And yeah, it creates a place where it's not about the paycheck, it's about the mission, and completing that mission. It's about the guy to your left and the girl to your right getting it done together. And that's what's created our three pillars, where our main goal is, yeah, we're going to help the customer with their power solution. That is our existence, but we're going to do it in a safe way, in a productive way, and in a way that has a high level of quality behind it.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
it's a little
awesome.
pitchy, but it's the
Yeah,
truth.
no, I loved it though. Well, I mean, it's very, I mean, it's inspiring because I've worked for a few different companies in the Permian, and just the difference, because like when you're that focused on leadership and company culture and quality of service, like it's not just you're not just trying to check a box. You know,
Hmm.
it's like you're really creating real change and real opportunity and a real home for people to be a part of. And that's huge, especially starting with, you know, like you said in the beginning, it was mostly military veterans. You're
Yeah.
calling on your own network. Totally makes sense. But it also, I feel like it gives Mesa a really strong foundation, not just because the personnel were military veterans, but because you had that, you all came to the table with that same discipline and the mission focused
Hmm.
and being very clear and like you said, leadership when they're transparent. It's a night and day difference. And I think as we see more companies like Mesa emerge in different sectors and in spaces in oil and gas, the better that is for the industry. Because like we were saying, like about leadership and you know, being a strong voice and a strong advocate for the industry. It's like, you know, knowing that there, if you're a voice for that mission, like there's people out there that can back your play.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and that's really
Yeah.
important. You're not selling an idea. It's like you're coming to the table saying these are the people that are doing it. And that's what I like to do, especially with the show and the brands that I've worked with, where it's like I can tell when people are for real, you know, or they're just for the minute, you know, because it'll be a flash in the pan.
That's a
And
good skill set. Hang on to that.
yeah, and I'm like I can I've learned to discern, and
Hmm.
I've learned that, you know, I mean, there are definitely a lot of companies out there like Mesa that have those values, that practice those values. And you know, but there's a lot of people in the industry, you know, so there's a lot of, I mean, anybody could get a company truck and put the logo on the side and you know, say they're doing it. But you know, to really be able to hone that culture, to grow from 100 employees to 1100, and that's massive
Just a few
scale
years.
in
Yeah.
just a few
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So I mean, and it's cool because like when I see the videos and you know different you know posts that like from Mesa, like you can see the different people, but then like there's a lot of that camaraderie, and again like you know with military. So,
Hmm.
and when you know when I first started my show, I've worked with one of the veteran organizations in Midland. I would go to their events and include them in different things I was doing in the podcast. And so that was when I first learned that there was such a just expansive, massive, or expansive military veteran community in
In the
West Texas,
industry.
in the
Yeah.
industry,
Hmm.
especially in the Permian Basin. And a lot of them would say the same thing. If they worked in the field, they felt very connected to military ops because it was similar environments,
Yeah.
time away from home, long hours,
Yeah.
and then just the community aspect of it, because I kept hearing the same stories that you know guys would get out of the military and they can't find a job, or they would struggle to transition into civilian life. So if they can be a part of these organizations or companies that are like really creating the right environment
Hmm.
for veterans, then you have a smoother transition and again something to be proud of, because you go into the military, you're proud of the service, you're you know being a part, you're fighting for the country, but then when you get out things can change so drastically, and not everyone values that or knows how.
Hmm.
And so then it's you know you go from having this purpose to not having the discipline, not having the structure, not having the community. So when you have the oil and gas industry and a lot of that is structured similarly, or a company like Mesa that was built on those fundamentals,
Yeah.
that's a game changer too.
Yeah. And you said it. You said it's the word purpose. Like, you know, you have a purpose when you're in the service. When you get out, you're looking for your next mission. You're looking for that purpose. And there's a lot of similarities in this industry and then serving in the military. And most of those though are, it's the camaraderie. It's, you're right, being out in the field, being next to the guy on your left and right, like you have a mission to complete. And I think that's what a lot of, not just veterans, but a lot of people find attractive about working for Mesa is we are very decentralized. Like, you know, people when they hear the military, they think, oh, you just take an order and you go do it. But that's not how it is at all. You have commander's intent, and that's basically like our CEO saying, hey, here's our strategic vision, here's our strategic mission, here's where we want to be in 5 years. That's it. and then you guys go figure it out. And so there's a lot of ownership in that, having that decentralized command. And when you have employees who get to own what they do, they'll sell out. They'll do everything they can because it's their plan. It's their mission. They get to make it their own. Here's your left and right boundaries, and you know where the end state is, and go get there. And there's nobody micromanaging or telling you how to do that. Like that creates such a healthy culture within Mesa.
Yeah, absolutely. I can look back on some of the companies that I've worked for, and they would miss that, where it's like there wasn't any structure, there weren't any parameters, there wasn't any guidance. And it's like you think you might be moving towards something, but you don't have the confidence because you don't have that support from the beginning to be able to make it happen.
Yeah.
And so it's like you're trying to create your own parameters, and that can be really difficult. I mean, especially if you're in sales or you're trying to grow and to learn. If you don't have that education or that foundation built, or supportive team, or a team with integrity and, like you said, transparency and leadership, then you can be fighting against the very organization that you're a part of, because you're going against the grain.
Yeah.
Where
you don't know
like,
which direction to go.
You don't even know, because like some of these companies, the way they're ran can be very disorganized. And it's just like, go figure it out, sell something, knock on every door. Oh, we already work with them, I didn't know that. And then so you got like the confusion within your own system.
Yeah.
And you can waste a lot of time and resources that way.
Yeah, you can definitely be inefficient for sure. And we're not a perfect company. We've had our hiccups here and there, our bumps and bruises. But that's one thing. Another thing that I love about our organization is we are a learning organization. There's really no recourse for making mistakes, as long as you were, as long as it wasn't immoral, unethical, or illegal.
Sure.
But yeah, go out there, make mistakes, have an after action review of it, an AAR, and learn from it, and then share that knowledge with the folks to your left and right. And so, yeah, that learning culture that we have just makes us quicker and more nimble down the road.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. It's inspiring, even just as an individual, because it's like that course correcting and learning as you go. That's just as much a part of it.
Yeah, that's a huge part of our culture as well.
Oh, that's great. Well, I've really enjoyed this, Trey. I've enjoyed hearing about Mesa and learning, the process of, how all of this works, and love hearing what you guys are doing in the industry. So, thank you for coming on today and sharing everything.
Yeah, I appreciate you so much for having us on and letting us tell a little bit about our story and our history. Also, again, I want to appreciate you and thank you for what you do for the industry and just getting that narrative out there, getting that message out there, and then helping educate a lot of us, because there's things that I learn on your podcast that I thought I might have known and I don't. So I appreciate it. I think it's very valuable.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you putting that fuel in my tank too, because I don't know. I'm
it's good. Keep it
I'm
up.
not sure. It's like getting those little moments of reassurance along the path. I'm like, okay.
You bet. Keep doing it.
Well, thank you again, Trey.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for watching Power of the Permian. We'll see you next time.